Greetings and welcome to the CCOF Foundation's Sustainable Produce Packaging for Farms that Sell Directly to Consumers webinar. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This webinar is part of our Farmers Marketing Tools for Success series that provides tips and tools for farmers to strengthen their sales and income at farmers markets and other direct-to-consumer venues. Funding for this project was made possible by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Marketing Service. Please note, the contents of the webinar do not necessarily represent the official views of the USDA. So there are various options for sustainable produce packaging. This webinar is intended as an educational resource to introduce you to different options for sustainable produce packaging so that you can do some research and find the options that are the right fit for your operation. CCOF and the CCOF Foundation does not endorse any specific produce packaging product. If you're having difficulties connecting to the webinar, if you can't hear or can't see, please call our office for support at 831-423-2263. Press 0 for the operator, and someone will help you connect to the webinar. My name is Megan Donovan. I will be your host today. I am a program specialist at the CCOF Foundation. The CCOF Foundation advances organic agriculture for a healthy world through education and hardship grants, technical assistance, and consumer education. Behind the scenes today, Adrian Fisher, the CCOF Foundation's program manager, will be providing webinar technical assistance. He'll be the one fielding questions when you chat them in and may hop on as an alternative host if there are any technical issues, which we're hoping do not arise. We are very excited to have our three presenters here today. Jamie Collins from Serendipity Farms, Sara Lozano from Sambrilo Packaging, and Linda Fritz from Sun Sugar Farms and Sustainable Produce Container. I'll introduce each one in more depth prior to their presentation. So I think most folks are probably super comfortable with Zoom at this point, but we're just going to go over a quick tutorial before we start the main presentation. So to see the Zoom webinar controls, move your mouse over the image of the shared screen. If you're in full screen viewing mode and would prefer to view the webinar in a window, click on the View Options tab at the top of the shared screen and select Exit Full Screen Mode to exit the full screen. Throughout the webinar, we will have time for questions and answers. To send in questions or to communicate with our webinar staff, click on the question and answer icon at the bottom of the shared screen. The question and answer box will pop open. Move it to the side of your screen if it blocks the view of the webinar. Write in your questions or comments into the field at the bottom of the box and click send. If you would like to send your question anonymously, click the send anonymously box to the left. Note, we will not be using the chat function during the webinar, so send all messages via the question and answer box. At the end of the webinar, you'll receive an invitation to take our webinar evaluation survey. To take the survey, click on the link and answer a few quick questions. Your feedback helps us improve our offerings and get ideas for future trainings. As a final reminder, today's webinar is being recorded and we'll send a link to the recording to everyone along with the PDF of the PowerPoint slides. So just to note, we have a lot of folks in the audience, which is really exciting, and we're going to try to get to as many questions and comments as we can. And we just wanted to apologize in advance if we don't get to your specific question, and encourage you to follow up after the webinar with additional questions. So if you want to just test out the question and answer box, write in, let us know where you're calling in from today, what you produce on your farm, and kind of like what you're researching or looking for more information on in terms of sustainable packaging. And we'll loop around to that information a little later in the presentation. But now I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Jamie Collins is owner of Serendipity Farms near Monterey, California, and has farmed organically for 2 decades. She sells produce via farmers markets, CSA, and other direct-to-consumer outlets. On the side, she works as an organic inspector and writes about food and farming for various publications. So Jamie, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, and I will hand things over to you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for showing up today. So today we're going to be talking about sustainable produce packaging considerations and farm stand design with a packaged produce in mind. Whoops. So farmers marketing during COVID-19 sure hasn't been as fun as it used to be. You can't have as many people in your stand, and they have to move quickly through the stand as there's lots of different logistics now with the different farmers market organization. So the emphasis has been on reducing customer handling of the produce and providing grab and go options so the customers can move quickly through the stand. So if we are going to use sustainable packaging, or if we are going to use packaging, best if we use sustainable for several reasons. Of course, better for the environment. Customers really appreciate it, and therefore it helps increase our sales. They really don't like when farmers use plastic. We get a lot of comments about how it's appreciated that we're using recycled containers and brown bags, for example. They also really like the option of grab and go during the times of COVID to avoid many hands touching the product. And next, we're going to talk about additional considerations for use and handling when you are using sustainable packaging. So a few things to think about. One is think about all the crops that you grow that you might be able to use in the packaging. Is there more than one? Like, for example, pint packaging could contain berries, could contain cherry tomatoes, tomatillos. Quite a lot of things would fit in a pint container or a quart container. Also, do you want to have a closed container or have the option of a lid? Are you, what sales outlets will you use it for? Will it be for the farmer's market? Do you also do wholesale? Could it be dual purpose? And then think about how much you'll need for the season. So estimate what you're growing and how many units you'll need before you place your order. And then also a really important one is, do you have a covered area to store the packaging? That's really important because a lot of times if you do, you do place an order, it has to be quite big to meet minimums. So we need to talk about, you need to think about that as well. So also about the cost, basic cost in ordering. How much does the packaging cost per unit? Are there shipping or delivering costs, or will you be able to pick it up locally at your local packaging place? And what is the price comparison between the different companies? And one other thing I wanted to mention is, will the company allow you to pick up if you do a big order, will they let you pick it up as you need it, or maybe store it at their facility? So that's also a good question to ask. And then moving on to labeling costs. So will the package that you want to use need a label? If so, what's the added cost of that label? And there are closed container labeling laws for the farmers market. There's also organic labeling rules. And then of course, if you want to put your farm branding, your logo on there, and also barcodes. A lot of times for wholesale, that's an added benefit for a shipper to take your product if it does have a barcode. And then find out, is there a minimum order or a run for your custom design orders? And I'm sure there is, but find out if you think you can run through that many and how long it would take you to do that. So check with your State Department of Agriculture on closed container labeling requirements and wholesale labeling requirements. For direct marketing in California, it's all the vegetables, fruits, nuts, and need to be that if they're sold in a closed container, they need to be labeled with the name, address, zip code of the producer, and the declaration of identity of the product. So strawberries, raspberries, cherry tomatoes, whatever it is inside, and the quantity of the commodity in the package. So how much does it weigh? So that all that needs to be on a label. So check with your, if you're out of California, you need to check with your Department of Agriculture to find out if a label is required for your packaging. And then for organic labeling requirements, it's just a good idea to check in with your certifier on those requirements and send them a sample of what you'd like to print before having them printed, so they can let you know if they're acceptable or not. And then here's a few resources for finding out about, like for CCOF's produce labeling, the fact sheet, and some labeling resources. It's a little complicated as far as the labels and some of the logo of the USDA versus the CCOF, if you want one or both, and the sizing. So just better to look into this a little further on your own. And then a really important one to consider about new packaging is, how will the packaging impact labor costs? So a lot of packaging needs, whether it's a sustainable packaging or not, it requires being assembled. And a lot of it takes time. So, and some are more complicated than others. Oftentimes some of the companies will be able to do that for you at a price. So it's good to figure out if that company can do that, and if the price if it makes sense to have them do that work for you. And also it will definitely slow down the packing speed if you have to assemble packaging. So think about that as well. And also, I mean, if you have a designated person that's really good at that, that's the best thing to do versus having a bunch of different people trying to assemble packaging, because I've found that one person out of my crew really did it quick and efficiently, and I found it was something that I really couldn't stand doing, and I wasn't that good at it personally. So I always handed that off to the person that did a better job than me at that. So if you have someone that's good with that, good to pick them for that job. Also, so how does the packaging impact the produce? Does it have airflow? Does it impact the shelf life of the product? So oftentimes some packaging absorbs juice, say from a raspberry, and that's desirable, right? Because you don't want a customer picking out a pint of berries when the juice is, it's all juicy and dripping on them, right? So some of those fiber containers are actually really good for things like raspberries, but might not be good for other things. They might dry out other things. So those are some things to consider when you are thinking about what packaging to choose. And also, how does the cooler affect the packaging? Is it wet in the cooler? Will the packaging sort of break down faster? And also, how do the boxes fit on the pallet? Do they need extra security? Do they need wires or corners or other support to sit on a pallet properly? How many can be packed on a pallet? Because if you're doing wholesale, that's good information for you to consider as well. So as far as marketing and packaging, it's important to sort of look at these different things. Can people see what's inside the packaging? How does it sell? So can they see inside? What if a customer wants more or less the container holds? Is it possible to upsell with multiple containers? So say like 3 pints of strawberries, you can do a little better deal, and it's in a grab and go container that people are more likely to take. And also, would you need to increase your prices to make up for the cost of the container? So that's something to consider as well. And as far as display considerations, so how does the color of the packaging impact the aesthetics of your stand? Some of the fiber baskets, for example, are different colors, blue, and do you want a more natural look? Do you like the blue? Does the blue make the product that's in there stand out? I mean, sometimes the blue really helps the product. Say if it was a golden raspberry in a blue package, that could actually help you sell that. And then also depends on your stand. Say at the farmer's market, do you have a single stall? Do you have a double stall? Do you need to stack the packaging to save space? So that's a couple things to think about. So wholesale packaging considerations. So if you're a farm that sells at the farmer's market but also sells to wholesale, and you're thinking about creating a box for your farm, a really good thing to do is to brainstorm all the different things that you grow and come up with what you might pack into the box, and see what box. Start with one that might be a general purpose box. Here's an example of one of my boxes. And so it holds 24 counts of kale, chard, it holds lettuces, it held fava beans. I mean, it held like 20 different things. And then it's really important to leave a box blank and a line for you to check in case there's something that you decided to grow later that you didn't think about, or something that you just want to add. That way you have the flexibility on that. Also, the product weights and the counts need to be on there. So that's on the, I don't know if you can see, but on the left side right here, there's poundage, there's counts, and there's also, again, another space blank so that you can write it in. So yeah, your wholesale packaging will also need your farm name and the address, and the logo would be very important. If you're going to go through all the work of doing the boxes, you would definitely want to design a logo if you don't already have one. And then the organic labeling, that you would have to make sure that your certifier approved before going to print. And any other labeling that you might want to add or think about, or claims that you want to make, if you're biodynamic, or any other sort of labels. And then important to think about how the smaller containers fit in the master box. So some containers are great, but they don't fit in the master box that well. So you need to look at the whole, all of that. And always good is ask your farmer friends what they like and what has worked for them, and test things out. All the companies that I've ever talked to or worked with are happy to send samples so that you can put your product in the packaging and see how it works, see how it looks, see how it sits on the table. So requesting samples is a good start. Okay, next we're going to talk about some marketing strategies with prepackaged produce. It's a little bit different than just putting it on the table. So always a good thing to do when you are displaying your produce is just pile it high and watch it fly, right? So put as big towers of produce is always very eye-catching. And to use color artfully. So this picture was taken pre-sustainable packaging options. So we did our blueberries and our kishu mandarins and our lemon guavas, and that was pretty to break up the blue on the table. And we also recycled those too. We reused them pre-COVID times. And then you always want to break up the green. So many of the things that we grow for row crop farmers are green, right? So here we've got the lemons next to the green celery, and then the purple cabbage next to the green cabbage. So that just provides sort of a rainbow of color at your stand that people really are drawn to. And then oftentimes with packaging, it's really helpful to be able for people to see what they're getting per unit, because by the pound, they're oftentimes not as familiar about how many are in a pound and what that looks like. So using this packaging really is helpful for people to see, you know, what that looks like, what they're getting for their money, right? So if I was to sell the blueberries at $12 a pound, that might scare people off. But when they see it in these cups, they can see, you know, $4 or $5 for a half pint, $10 for a pint, and $18 for a quart. They're not as scared off by that. So that in that way, it helps your marketing. Also, grab and go options are always good. So these are potatoes in mesh bags. And then in our spinach, we always pack our spinach in $5 bags. And if we didn't do that, we would hardly sell any. I mean, it's amazing how having that option where people don't have to, especially now with COVID, but especially if they don't have to use the tongs and put it in the bag themselves and take that time, they're going to be more likely to buy your product. And then again, just upselling with prepackaged product. I mean, we're all familiar with the 3 packs of berries. I mean, that's been around for a long time. But what about salsa packs, right? So we've got tomatoes, peppers, and tomatillos. So if I would have had some 3 packs, I would have done a 3-pack of those things and call it a salsa pack, and then also have the cilantro on the table, just to kind of give people ideas of what to do with that. And that's sort of you're doing the thinking for them. You're providing something easy for them to grab and go and make, and an idea as well. So also selling prepackaged bulk items. Do you have a lot of tomatoes in the field? What about a lot of strawberries and you need to move case amounts? It's really good to, put them in those cases and maybe advertise ahead of time on social media and let people know, hey, we have San Marzano tomatoes, 15 pounds for $25. We're bringing 10 to market, come pick them up. That's really helpful if you have a lot that you need to move. Making, mixed peppers, a lot of times mixed sweet pepper boxes, that would be a good one. Squash boxes, like a variety of different kinds of squash. They could grab maybe 20 pounds of various squash, since we're coming up on Thanksgiving. That could be a good one. So anytime you have a lot of something that you want to move, it's really good to already package it in the unit that you would like to sell at the discounted rate, and just tell people ahead of time that that you're going to be bringing that to market, or you'll be selling it off the farm. And then also integrating sustainable packaging into your stand. So on the left, here's my stand. It's not exactly how I would have done it, but from a text message and a last minute help that came to help me when I needed somebody to do a market, they did a pretty good job. I have the fava beans in $5 bags, and the snap peas in a 1 pound, and it also is a quart size sustainable packaging with a window in it. And I would have put those together instead of separated by the blueberries. But anyway, so and then of course we've got the blueberries in the half pint and the pint packaging. So my critique of this setup would be to put the smaller baskets of blueberries where the snap peas are on the top, and move things over and put the snap peas with favas. But they did a great job considering what I asked them to do, a last minute notice. So, and then also on the right side is this beautiful packaging at the farmers market. Since you have to have a label, sometimes you have to talk to your farmers market managers in your various markets, but oftentimes you can get away with opening the box and not having a label. So this is a way that you can do that if you have a packaging like this. And a lot of customers will appreciate having a lid. So, then they can close it after they buy it. So. And now I'm ready to take any questions that you might have about design with packaging or anything else along those lines.
Great, thanks, Jamie. So we did have one question come in, but before we get to the questions, I just wanted to loop back around to who's online. And we have folks from North Carolina and Nevada, and a number of folks here in California from San Joaquin County, San Juan Bautista, and Santa Cruz. And a number of people are looking for alternatives to plastic clamshells, and also some folks looking for value-added bagged and box ideas. So it's nice to have a good diversity of folks in the crowd. And so one question that came in, and feel free to write more questions in as we start the question and answer session. What's the best time of year to buy packaging in your experience?
Well, I mean, I guess that if you are going to have it printed, you should be doing that in the winter time or in your off season when you have time to do that, way before you need it, months before you need it. But I buy it as I need it. Right now we're not using any prepackaged. We finished, at one point we did a lot more wholesale, and we ran through all of our boxes years ago. So we just buy things as we need them now. But I don't think that if there's any, if you're not having anything printed, I think buying it as you need it works, unless you find that your local place doesn't have things on the regular and you need to stock up. But that would depend on where you're at, I guess.
Great, thank you. And there was a question that came in asking who made the mushroom box packaging, and that's actually one of our speakers later in the presentation. So I will let Linda of the Sustainable Produce Container answer your questions in more depth on that. And then someone else was wondering, are there any produce bags in particular that are compostable or biodegradable that you recommend?
I don't have those. I would, if I was looking for those, I would look for non-GMO corn, or I think there's some potato packaging. But one problem I have with the bio bags is they dry things up. So that's my problem with them. If they didn't, I'd be using them all the time, but they dry greens up especially. And even roots, they will dry up, but mostly greens are really not, they don't do well in those bags. So I hate to put them in that and sell them to a customer and then have the greens break down or dry out, within a couple days and them not come back to the stand. So it's unfortunate, but somebody needs to design one, unless I don't know of it yet. But somebody needs to design one that actually keeps the moisture on the product. So.
Great, thank you. That's a good recommendation. And if there are folks in the audience who have experience with compostable or biodegradable bags too that are working well for them and want to share that, chat in and we'll read out your answers. So we had a couple of people that are in different areas of the United States, so South Carolina, and then also some folks from Hawaii, and they're looking for sort of local sourcing or packaging that's affordable when shipped long distances. Do you have any recommendations on that?
Oh, shipped to them?
Yeah, I think basically the broader issue is that are there companies that have affordable shipping costs that you're aware of?
You know what, I'm not sure on that. I'm lucky to be able to get things pretty local, so I'm sorry.
Can I jump in?
We can look into that. Oh, sure.
Or do you want me to wait and I'll tell about, like, ordering with pallets totally can change the pricing to be negligible if you get to that point, no matter where you ship. So if you can get with other farmers and get a pallet of products, a pallet of containers, the cost goes way down.
Great, thanks. And just to let folks know who the voice on the line, that's Linda, of Sustainable Produce Container, who we'll be hearing from a little later, but that's a good recommendation if you're dealing with long shipping distances and just shipping costs in general.
You know what? Can I jump in again? Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know about packaging. I've purchased packaging for value added things that actually didn't, after a certain amount, over $80, didn't even charge me shipping fees. So on that end, I do know that if you're doing any value added, I was using we use the biodegradable packaging for our different spreads and salsas and such, but and it's just over $80 or over $100, and then they waive the shipping. So I'm sure shipping is a lot different than it used to be. I was just thinking in like pallet quantities, like of certain things that might be, have to be shipped by a truck or something. A big truck might be harder.
Great.
Also, Megan, sorry, I know this is hard to jump in, but somebody had asked about the sustainable bags.
Yeah.
I know I used to put my edamame in plastic clamshells, but then I found this bread bag, which was really, really thin, but it had micro perfs in it, and I could heat seal it. So I can email you that link to, where I found this, if that might be of interest to people, because it made it easier for me to package things like edamame, that needed some venting, and you want a certain amount of moisture, but you don't want it to dry out. And they're perfect for that. And they're really, really thin. So I didn't feel as guilty, packaging them in that.
Yeah, you can send that out and we'll include that in the wrap up. And so what you're saying is it's still plastic, but it's less
so thin.
plastic.
Yeah,
than
it's super.
before.
Yeah, it's super thin, but yet it's got those little tiny micro perfs, and you can heat seal it with just a regular heat sealer, and then you have a really nice bag for people to grab and go that is going to keep your product nice.
Great. So yeah, send that along and we'll include that in the follow-up. And so I think we're gonna wrap up questions now and move on to our next presenter, but we'll have other question and answer opportunities throughout the webinar. So if you have more questions that come up and want to send them in, keep them coming. And I also just wanted to note that someone had written in, one of our folks from Hawaii, just to say that obviously in Hawaii, there's they run into issues of getting packaging shipped and affordably, and that the question was less a question and more a comment that we often have to find another farmer to collaborate and share products with to make an order viable, which makes custom orders prohibitive. So thanks for that comment, and that's definitely, I think, anybody who doesn't quite need a huge order probably is thinking along those same lines. So with that, we're gonna switch over to our next presenter, and I just wanna make sure everything is set up for her and she can have control of the presentation. And also I wanted to mention before we kind of get into our two representatives from sustainable packaging companies that there are a lot of options out there for sustainable packaging, and that this again is for you to do your research, find the packaging that works right for your operation. So here are a number of different companies that you can check out. we'll be hearing from Sam Brilo and Sun Sugar Farms Sustainable Produce Container, but there are also other companies out there. A number of them are located outside the US, so it's interesting to see what Canada and Europe is doing in terms of sustainable packaging, but they also sell here in the United States. And also, you can work with your current packaging company to develop new products. That's another way to go. And so we've heard of some farmers that are doing that as well. And also, as I said at the beginning, we're not endorsing any of these particular companies, but just check them out and make the decision that's right for your operation. And I also just wanted to note, when we were doing some research for this webinar, we got a lot of recommendations for sustainable food service packaging and cutlery and plates for value-added products or prepared foods. And so I thought I would share those as well. In the event there are farms that are, also have prepared foods or doing some value-added, there are some sustainable packaging options for that as well. So with that, I will introduce Sara Lozano, is the Manager of Marketing and Product Development at Sam Brilo Packaging. Sam Brilo is headquartered in Watsonville, California, and is starting their 97th year in the agricultural industry. They have been pioneering innovative packaging solutions since 1923 and received Best Packaging in 2018 from the Produce Marketing Association for their Ready Cycle sustainable packaging line. Sara has been a driving force behind Ready Cycle's mission and has shed light and education on packaging choice for consumers, retailers, and growers that is better for our planet and communities. Sara is the proud mother of her 2-year-old daughter, Grace, who is featured here, who loves being at home, outside, and enjoys all things pastry, which I would have to agree with. So,
thanks, Megan.
Sara, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to Jamie and Linda also for presenting with me. And thanks for the intro, Megan. So yes, we are a family-owned and operated company since 1923. We are located in Watsonville, California, just south of Santa Cruz and north of Monterey. Our warehouse here caters to a lot of different CCOF growers and other organic farmers in the area. We do local pickups, local deliveries, and we also ship nationwide. So today I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the packaging that we offer. Jamie was so kind to feature some of that because she's one of our dear customers. So thank you, Jamie. And I'll kind of walk you through some of the design processes that we go through for sustainable packaging. So one of our core product lines is our vegetable packaging. It can be both dry or waxed cartons. We have several sizes. And these are kind of a really great standby favorite for many of our clients, not only to pack and ship their product, but also to merchandise in as well, whether it be at farmers market, their farm stand, or also using it for their CSA program. We also have a large lineup of berry packaging, ranging everything from the master trays to what we refer to as inner packs. So everything from the half-pint bushberry baskets to pint baskets, both the traditional green poly mesh to our sustainable baskets. They fit into the same tray as well. And then we also do some larger sizes, including the 1-pound trays with the traditional 1-pound PET clamshells. And also that same tray fits the 1-pound Ready Cycle strawberry packaging as well. We also decided in 2014 to offer a certified organic stock print. We were getting lots and lots of customers asking, hey, do you have any other, option available to me, rather than me having to maybe print a larger label that lets people know that I am an organic farmer. And so we decided to do a certified organic stock print, in which a lot of our customers are enjoying. These, just like our other fresh fruit and veg stock print, come pre-printed with the grid that Jamie mentioned earlier in her presentation. We have various sizes, so whether you're doing chard, or you're doing romaine, or you're doing bunched greens, beets, etc., there's usually a checkbox for that. So those sizes have kind of the corresponding checkboxes as well. We also decided to offer a certified organic stock print in our ReadyCycle packaging line as well. So ReadyCycle, we wanted to introduce this sustainable packaging line as an alternative to plastics. It was very important for us to have a packaging solution for our clients and for the community that was non-waxed. There was no labels, no plastic components, and something that is fully recyclable. This is a aqueous coated solution, meaning that there's no paraffins, there's no PFOAs, no PFAs, which are those fluoride-based chemicals that really don't break down. Our containers have none of that, so you can home compost this just like you would like with other type of paperboard materials if you do that in your brown layer, and it can also be 100% recycled as well. We wanted to feature one of our customers that helped pioneer the ReadyCycle movement with us, Javier Zamora, out in the Romas. He was one of our first customers that we trialed ReadyCycle with, and has converted many of his sizes, or many of his SKUs that he was packing in plastic over to ReadyCycle. We've done everything with him from half pints to 1 pounders, and he's been able to not only offer these packaging solutions to his clients at farmers markets, but also to retail, direct to retail, many co-ops in the area, and specialty and independent grocers in our area as well. I wanted to just highlight some of the clients that have chosen to do a custom print option, which has been really successful for them and for their customers that have really requested sustainable packaging to be a part of their produce section. So I wanted to show you a few examples and just some variety too. I love Jamie, how she put in that salsa 3-pack. I think that's such a brilliant idea. I love that. And it's just really nice to see just some different options that customers have chosen to do, but also offer this in their CSAs, at their farm stand, and again, promote it and merchandise it, like what Jamie was doing at farmers market as well. And some more custom print. These are 8 1-pound containers for organic strawberries of Coke Farm. And another fun project that we did almost a year ago was with Forbidden Fruit Orchards. We did a custom 6-ounce blueberry, which was really exciting, and branched into the market there and into this product category, which we're really excited about. So I think what's kind of important to note about ReadyCycle is that we do the forming. Meaning that these come formed and nested in a case, very similar to the way clamshells are packed and presented. Once you open that case, you're ready to pack in them. So there's no folding. These are all machine formed and glued and ready to go. We have an in-house design team and product development team. So when you call to figure out pricing or want to talk about a custom product, you are probably going to get me or one of the other team members. So that's kind of nice as well. And again, we're local. We do ship nationwide. We've done shipping as small as a case to as large as a truckload. So I definitely feel some of those shipping pains and concerns that some of you guys have written in on the Q&A, and we definitely try to help you work through those as well. And here's my contact information. I know Megan's going to be sending out these slides and everything, but I'm definitely ready to open it up for any questions that I can help you guys with.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing the different options and just some of the different custom printing options that are available to folks. And so if you have questions for Sara, please go ahead and write them in. Some of the questions that we got prior to this webinar on sustainable produce packaging are, what are some good options for smaller farms that are kind of don't need an entire pallet of something? How would you recommend that they approach sustainable packaging?
Megan, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, so for smaller farms that may not, have the space to store a whole custom order, or
Sure.
are just kind of wanting to test the waters, what would be a good way for them to go?
The best way to go is go with a stock print item. So we have 3 stock print items for our Ready Cycle sustainable packaging line. I would be happy to send you guys samples so you can test those out, whether it's, for your market, your CSA, your pre-packed produce boxes, etc., whatever type of interpack you're looking for. And definitely feel free to contact me directly, and we can try to get you some samples so you can test them out. The stock print options, we ship as little as a case. So you can order just 1 case quantity, whether it's a pint basket, that's going to be a total quantity of, I think, 450 baskets per case. And then the larger size, which is our 1 pound stock print, comes at 180 per case. So that's what I would recommend.
Okay, great. Thank you. So someone wrote in wondering if you can get a copy of the slides, and yes, we'll be sending those out in the follow-up email with the recordings, so you'll have all of those there. You don't need to frantically scribble notes. And another question came in wondering if waxed cartons can be recycled.
No.
Not really. There is very, very little infrastructure for waxed box recycling or composting. I think I know of just locally only one area, if they're still open, out of San Francisco, that was accepting large quantities of waxed cartons from the San Francisco wholesale market, and they were composting, but that was on a very large scale. And I believe that infrastructure only existed in that one county in our Bay Area. So I'm not very aware of any other infrastructure. Maybe somewhere in Seattle or in the Portland area, they might have some. They've been pretty advanced in some composting and recycling efforts. But other than that, I am not aware of much infrastructure that's equipped to deal with waxed cartons other than landfill.
Okay, great. Thanks. And then another question is, any thoughts about how we can get away from using larger wax boxes, cases that are not recyclable? So do you have any strategies for folks around that?
Strategies. I know that there's some farms that are able to use RPCs, which are kind of a plastic bin, and they're able to wash and sanitize those. Those might be a good option if you're looking for a direct replacement for cartons, but especially if you're looking for a carton that you're basically not going to be able to get back. If you can get away with the dry box, great, because then that can be recycled in the cardboard recycling stream. But if not, I'm not aware if you would need to have a waxed product for water resistance. I'm not sure.
Okay, great, thanks. And just to follow up on that, I think you may have answered this question already. In terms of food safety, this is one of the reasons you wouldn't want to reuse a box. So the farm is using biodegradable box liners for the solution to that. But they're continuing to look for better solutions. So I think some of your ideas about using the reusable containers that can be washed and sanitized is one way to go. So,
you know, there's one idea that a couple of our clients do for their CSA programs, and maybe many of you use this as well. They'll do a polyliner bag in a waxed carton. And when their customers go to pick up their CSA, they're basically just taking the bag full of the produce. Some of that produce is packed with ready cycle product, whether it be berries or some of the smaller items like cherry tomatoes. And then there's some loose, you know, leafy greens or some beets or apples, etc. So what they do is they see the box that's assigned to them, they open it up, they take the entire poly liner, and then they fold up the box and leave it so that the box can be reused and the box is never brought to the customer's house or car, or etc. So that might be a good idea.
all right, great. Thank you. So I think we're going to wrap up questions now for Sara, but if there are more things, something comes to mind as we continue the presentation, feel free to write things in and we'll have an open question and answer at the end. And I know there was a couple questions I didn't get to, but I thought they would be good for the entire speaker panel. So we'll get to those a little later on. So let me just, again, get ready for our next presenter. So Linda Fritz, owner of Sun Sugar Farms, went from a background in automotive electrical engineering and running her own marketing firm to growing fresh edamame and Sun Sugar cherry tomatoes commercially. Since she farmed using sustainable methods, it didn't feel right putting her produce in plastic containers. The fact that there were no truly recyclable, cost-competitive options at the time, and billions of plastic clamshells end up in landfills each year, drove her to invent the sustainable produce container line of packaging. She also created the collapsible, reusable Cresby crate system to reduce plastic bags and wrote an illustrated children's book about beneficial creatures in the garden. So Linda, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and I will pass things on to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Megan. And hello to everyone interested in earth-friendly packaging. Today, I hope to answer a couple questions for y'all. Number one, why use sustainable packaging since it seems like it could be more expensive? And number two, what are the possible results if you do switch? Now, my motto for the sustainable produce container I designed is to make more profit, not more waste, because that's what it's done for me and for other growers. But first, how did I ever even get here? Well, you see, it all started because I hated vegetables. And when I found a couple I liked, the Sun Sugar cherry tomato right there in the middle, and then edamame, I thought, I'll grow these to help Kentucky kids eat healthier, because if I like it, they might like it. And here in Kentucky, we could use the help. So I started on that path. And as I researched how to grow the best produce, I found that growing organically, hang on one second, I wanted to move to the next slide. I found that I wanted to grow organically and sustainably because it seemed the right way to go. In fact, I used to use cardboard boxes, newspapers, and paper bags for weed control. But when it came to packaging and what I was going to put my produce in, it was really frustrating. And all the sustainable packaging I could find at the time were just open containers that had weird stretch lids or none at all. And they were kind of expensive, so I didn't want to give them away, but I also didn't want to pour my tomatoes in a bag for customers and have them get all crushed. I mean, I had worked too hard for that. So in 2014, I was, doing farmers markets, but then I also became a seasonal vendor to Kroger here in the Cincinnati area. And now my packaging definitely needed to have a lid and a place for a barcode. And plus I wanted to take advantage of this branding opportunity to promote my farm and my produce. And the only real option I could find was the plastic clamshell. And the first thought I had was, well, okay, clamshells can be recycled, right? Because they're made of a number one plastic like water bottles. Take clamshells because there are no buyers who want to mess with all this. There's just no market. And especially with China, closing their doors to our recycled plastic, these clamshells end up in landfills. In fact, if you totaled up all the discarded clamshells used for packaging just strawberries in just the USA, it would fill up 3 Super Bowl stadiums each year. And of course, as cheap as clamshells were, I was like, what can I find that's going to be as inexpensive? So every year before the season would start, I'd look and look and look for something else that could help me reduce my waste. And finally, at an ag show in 2018, I got an idea when I saw this 5-pound cardboard blueberry box. And I was like, okay, that's definitely recyclable and definitely biodegradable in a backyard compost pile, but it's just a little bit big for my cherry tomatoes. And then I also found out that they shipped flat. And so I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I could assemble it because I always hated how much space the plastic clamshells would take up in my little tiny packing room. And so I started with the blueberry box layout, and then I designed a package that would have vents for circulation, but I wanted them to be pretty and to be earth themed to attract customers. And I wanted them to represent all the elements that went into making the produce, like the sun and the plants and the rain. And then plus, it would protect the produce with a hinged lid that could be, securely closed and not pop open like clamshells. Because that was another thing I hated about clamshells. I'd had cases where the clamshells popped open right when the customer picked them up. And so I also made it though that people could open it up and take a quick peek, like if they were buying eggs. So sort of like an egg carton. And because it was more of a boxy design versus like a trapezoid, it was able to stack higher than the clamshell. So that was kind of another plus. But in order for a paper company to be able to cut out these little intricate vents, we made it out of a lightweight but sturdy paper board. So it's not a heavy cardboard, it's a lightweight paper board, similar to like a cereal box, candy box, beer bottle holder, bakery box. And I made them the same size footprints as clamshells, the different sizes of clamshells. So it would be easier for other growers to switch as well. But was it worth starting a business that had a market and finding printer companies that could cut all this stuff up? I mean, did consumers even want sustainable packaging? And I found that they did. Research shows that 80% of people want more environmentally conscious products, and 77% polled felt that paper was the most environmentally safe material. And more said they would indeed pay a little extra for a package that they could easily recycle. And it's probably, especially in California, not so much in Kentucky, but we're getting there. And then there is also sustainable alternatives that are popping up. Like, we've heard from ReadyCycle, and there's others out there. And part of this is all being driven by grocery stores' goals of zero waste. In fact, my half-pint container, that first picture that you see there, was used at the Super Bowl Live 2020 Farmers Market because all of the packaging that would be used because of the Super Bowl had to be sustainable. They would not accept any plastic. So the farmers market there found my containers and used them for their tomatoes and berries. And then, as we all know, home delivery is increasing on the rise because of CSAs and produce delivery businesses having to deal with COVID-19 pandemic issues. And of course, you want to protect your produce during deliveries, and consumers don't really want to end up with packaging that sits in landfills. So, but did other growers share my, want sustainable packaging besides me? And yes, I've found them from across the country and in other countries that they do, that you're out there. growers who've contacted me about my sustainable produce container feel like they should be the leaders in this field when it comes to packaging and sustainability, that they share the same convictions I do. They're sick of a single-use plastic world, and they want packaging that reflects their values and their love of the land, and they're willing to pay a little more. And plus, they want to seize the opportunity of the good publicity you gain by using sustainable packaging. And there's also grants out there that help them pay for the packaging. Here in Kentucky, this guy here, Caleb, he was able to get his logo printed on the lid and his farm story on the bottom of the 2-quart package for just half price, because the Kentucky Proud marketing program paid the other half, making it really inexpensive for a custom printed container. And all we had to do was just put the Kentucky Proud logo, do the graphic design. So I just included that on the lid, and there was plenty of room for that. And he just had to order a pallet of them, which was about 10,000 containers, to get the containers cost effectively printed on. And actually he was the one, he had contacted me and asked me if I could make a 2-quart version, because that's what size he needed for his mushrooms. As you can see, he's got a really nice picture there of them. But what are the results of switching to that kind of a package? Is it worth it financially? And for me and for Caleb, so far it has been definitely a yes. When I was using the plastic clamshells, and there's that first picture is my blob of sun sugars in the clamshell, I would pack them in the quart container because I felt like, a pint is just as much plastic, pretty much. So I'd rather sell people more produce per package. So they had to buy a quart of tomatoes from me. But when I switched to my sustainable produce container, I felt comfortable downsizing them. And I went with a low profile pint, which I feel is a better design anyway for produce, instead of a square pint. And when I changed over to this, some good things happened. Number one, I made more money. So I was selling a quart or 24 ounces of tomatoes at $5 retail. In 2018, when I switched over, I started selling half as much, 12 ounces at $4 retail. So it was just a little bit less, but it was half as cost, but it was, half as much produce. And without getting into the details of all the container costs, even though the sustainable produce container does cost a little more than plastic clamshells, and I do have to assemble them, and if you're somewhere else, you're going to have to pay for shipping, I'm still ahead because I'm selling 24 ounces, that same 24 ounces total for $8 instead of $5. So that's part of the strategy. And then plus the containers take up less space. So you can see that first picture there, that's 500 of my low profile pints in the same box that held 500 plastic clamshells. So it takes up less room in the packing room. It costs less to ship, even though it's heavier. Another good thing is that my package started getting noticed without me having to demo at Kroger saying, hey, I'm here, I've got local produce, can you believe it? And one customer even called me wondering, she's like, is this Sun Sugar Farms? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I would like to know who at Kroger to thank for introducing this package. I'm like, oh man, phew. I'm like, me. And she's like, I bought these tomatoes not even knowing if they were any good. She told me she was just excited about the package because she quit buying any produce if it came in plastic. And I know I can relate to that because I do the same thing. I'm not buying anything in plastic anymore if I can avoid it. And then this past year, I finally got through all the pretty labels that I'd created for the first year because I thought, oh my goodness, I better at least have a picture of tomatoes on the package. So you see in that third picture where they're all stacked up there, and you can see how really high you can stack them because it's cardboard. It's not going to slip off like a clamshell will. And I put, I had a really pretty label of the actual tomatoes on there, but it's a UV label and it's not going to biodegrade that fast at all if it does. So, and the last picture on the right is a picture of a stamp I created with the barcode, with my logo, with the Kentucky Proud logo, so I could get some marketing dollars. And the stamp itself was, pretty inexpensive. So I never have to buy, thousands of stickers again, to get a good price. So other question, but you do have to think differently when you introduce, when you go to this sustainable package, because, you don't want people comparing apples to apples. So I say new package, new price. And customers are actually going to be okay with this because they're used to paying more for smaller quantities. Like, I mean, you buy a can of Coke, it really almost costs as much as, a 2 liter. So I was able to get more per ounce for the smaller quantity, and I only reduced the package cost by like 25%. And people do appreciate these smaller packages because you waste less, and maybe even try a new way. Like the picture there of the shiitake mushrooms, that guy is in California and he's selling 6 ounces of shiitake mushrooms in the low profile pint because that's what fit best for him. And he's able to make a good return on that. And some other mushroom growers stopped selling by weight altogether, and now they go by volume because they know most customers don't really care about exact weights as long as the container looks full and good. And this frees them up from weighing things all together. They now actually assemble the containers. They get there a little early and assemble them on site and then pack them as they need them right before the market starts. So it's actually a win for customers since they don't end up wasting anything, win for you since you make a better price, and win for the earth since the package is also easy to recycle. Now, but who else is able to use these sustainable produce containers besides me? Well, mushroom growers absolutely love these, which was a total surprise to me because I always thought mushrooms had to be totally sealed because they're always wrapped in saran wrap at the grocery and they're in a little plastic tub. But here's one grower's comment. These boxes hold the mushrooms so well, they don't spoil. They just dry up a little bit if left in the fridge, in which case you can rehydrate them in water. No waste at all. I sell out at every market. And I know with mushrooms, if I get them in plastic, they tend to get slimy. So I'd rather have dry over slimy. Another market segment that benefits from sustainable packaging are obviously CSAs, companies that do produce delivery, and zero waste stores. As another mushroom grower says, with increased emphasis on touchless transactions, these 2-quart boxes are perfect for delivering our mushrooms. And I also sell a lot of containers to a zero waste store in California, whose goal there is to never have anything thrown away that they send out. And because, delicate berries are always going to need some kind of protection, an easy to recycle cardboard type box is perfect. And finally, any of you guys out there looking to upscale or add on from your farmer's market and do grocery stores, they're finding my sustainable produce containers give them a professional branded look to their packaging. Annie from North Carolina says, one of the things I'm most proud of as farm manager is finding these containers on the internet. People have told us they're buying our mushrooms in these boxes as gifts for people. They're so pretty. So whether it's a custom hand stamp that you see like in that third picture, they used a stamp like I do now too, or we print up a pallet with your logo, barcode, and story, you'll be able to competitively scale up to the larger markets. And in the higher volumes, our pricing, if you get really big, our pricing is almost the same as plastic. So, and if you are at that point with high volumes, you're like, well, I am not hand folding those suckers. We also offer a free forming machine with a multi-year contract that can do the folding for you. Because like Jamie said earlier, you got to consider that, and I do have kids. Some kids are a lot faster than others. So I pay by the box, like you get this much per box for folding each box. And some are making really good money and others are not breaking my bank because they're only getting paid for the ones they make and not by the hour. So this is a quick summary of everything about the sustainable produce container. It is 100% recyclable and will biodegrade in mere weeks in a backyard compost. It is also PFA free. They're made of either a thick craft pack, like a bakery box, or the reversible aqua coat material that comes brown on one side, white on the other, which makes it kind of nice to, kind of organize your produce and what you put in it. The vents are going to offer air circulation and more views than your typical plastic punnet. This and the material handles temperature transactions transitions really well. Like if you think about a 6-pack of beer, it's the same type of cardboard material, so it has a pretty high wet strength. The hinged lid with the anchor lock and the tuck tabs help reduce spills and shrinkage. All sizes have a similar footprint that clamshell equivalents do, so they'll all fit in the master cartons. The sizes are right now the half pint, reversible square pint, the low profile pint, the quart, and the reversible 2-quart. There's single or full color printing available for, like I said, a minimum of a pallet, but you can also get a stamp and looks pretty cool anyway. And they ship flat to save space. They can be hand assembled or machine formed, and they're made in the USA. And as you can see, many kinds of produce will work in the sustainable produce container, but it even works for, I've got some farmers who put bagged items in the box. So like granola and microgreens, they just really like the fact that you can stack them and, you know, protects your products in there. And then here is my contact information if there's any follow-up questions. And that was a really cool stamp that one of the farmers did in New York, I think. But I would hope that you would consider sustainable packaging in the near future if you are not already using it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda. That was a nice introduction. And it was also fun to hear your story about how you kind of got into this space. So if you have any questions for Linda, please write them in. And someone was wondering, do your containers work for roots, beets or other types of root vegetables?
Yeah, so I think if you back up a couple slides, there was one where it shows potatoes, which is a root thing, right? I mean, it comes out of the ground. So that's a good, I think it was page market validation, or there's one across there. Yeah, so they're strong enough that, you know, once you close them, you push the little anchor lock in. Yeah, it was like the fifth page. So in fact, that'd be a good page to go to.
Yeah, I think you can, oops.
Yeah, I'm doing it now. So oops, now I got to go forward. Because that's a good page to be on anyway, because market validation. Okay, so you see there in the fourth picture, there's potatoes in there. You know, so if you put the brown side inside, it's not going to show the dirt as much, unless I don't know much about root things. So if you wash them, maybe they're not dirty anyway. But the other advantage, like if you look at the second picture, you know, she's got the stamp or a label with the choices, like Jamie was talking about, you know, having your check boxes. So that's a really good idea. And that's something, you know, we can print on too. I mean, because they print flat, you know, you can print anything. You can put your check boxes on the top, you could put check boxes on the bottom, you know, but yeah, for root vegetables, it would work. But that's really all I know. So sorry, I don't know more.
Thanks. And another question came in wondering, how do the Sun Sugar Farm containers handle getting wet? Like you're at a rainy farmer's market.
Yeah, so they do have a fairly high wet strength. And in fact, the next video I make, I was gonna like dunk a whole thing in water and then pull it out and then, you know, show how it still is pretty strong. But it is still paper. So if you do get them totally soaked, my advice would be to let them dry, you know, before you try to handle them a lot. And then they'll maintain their shape. It's not like a piece of paper that just totally falls apart. I mean, it's like thinking about like if you had a box of cereal and it got wet, you know, it should be okay. It's just not going to be the greatest, but it's not plastic. I mean, we can't have everything, but so.
Great, thank you. And sort of this question about how the sustainable containers handle getting wet or being in moisture is something that we've heard from various people as well. So Sara, do you also just want to comment on how the Ready cycle handles being wet or being in a damp environment? I think we'll let Sarah take some time to get off mute and move on to the next question, but we'll loop back around to that one.
Hi.
Well,
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
and the other thing I was going to say about that is, Jamie mentioned, Sarah mentioned, get some samples. I mean, that's a great idea. And like on my website, you can order a single pack of samples or a 10 pack of samples and just try it out, because everybody's picking methods are different. Everybody's situation is different. There was a lady in Panama that ordered some samples and she I think it's just too wet down here for paper. She's like, I hate plastic, but so just try it out in your own situation. But sorry, Jamie or Sarah, I was just trying to kill some time till you got on.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted. I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. I was just saying that it is a non-waxed coating, so it's not going to act like a waxed box. But we do have clients that that harvest, during the foggy mornings here on the Central Coast and ship them to retailers with great success. So yeah, like what Linda would say, I said the best thing to do, especially since we don't know all the growing conditions where our clients are, order a sample from us and then we can go from there.
Great, thanks. And so for both of you, for ordering samples, about how many do you get with that order?
I'll go first. Being a small business, I wish I could send out samples for free, but what I do is I have a legal USPS envelope, and I can put a sample of each size and a sample of a printed one, and send that out to you for the cost of the shipping, which is like $10. And then if there was a certain one that you wanted to really focus on, we can do as small a sample as 10 each. Of whatever size you wanted, and then you just pay for the shipping for that. And then, you could also get a case, but that's how I'm set up. So go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, so just contact me for the amount of samples that you're looking for. We can usually do, one to three pretty reasonably. And then anything larger than a certain size, we have a sample kit size, anything larger than that you're looking for, we would just figure out what the shipping cost is going to be for that.
Great, thanks. And then another question that folks have been asking is, what are kind of some of the main obstacles you see for farmers that are switching from the kind of current containers that are available to more sustainable options? Are there any things that they should just kind of keep an eye out for, or might be different things you need to think about than with current packaging?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Linda.
Well, I can, here in Kentucky, we are not as progressive as California. And there was actually one small market store that I had been delivering to my tomatoes, and he served basically a much older crowd, and he didn't order that much anyway. And he would take my tomatoes and put them in plastic after I would drop them off in the paper ones. I was like, okay, we're done. Because it's like, there might be people out there that, they just want the old way and they don't really care. So that would be your obstacle. You might run into that, but if you're in California, you might not.
Great, thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, I was going to say that we've had some success with kind of friends of farmers pitching in. When I say that, like if you and you have a couple other farmer friends that are looking to make this sustainable packaging switch and you guys want to split the cost, we found that has been really helpful. We've also found that a lot of farmers markets are looking for ways to help growers pack in sustainable packaging. We've had many conversations with those markets, so definitely feel free to reach out and see if maybe some of those markets have already looked into ReadyCycle and are looking at ways to help offset their growers pack in a sustainable option. So
Yeah, I would add too that, because these are brand new, both the Ready Cycle and mine, we don't have the years and years and years of getting the ROI back on plastic clamshells, so just that simple fact right there in the small volumes means that it is going to cost a little bit more. But there are definitely, like here in Kentucky, they'll help you pay for part of the marketing costs. I know there's other grants that other states have provided for sustainable endeavors. And so I would just check with your state to see if, you can share the cost of the package if you put their, Kentucky proud or Ohio raised or whatever logo on there. So just to kind of go off what Sarah was saying too, see if you can't get help.
Great, thanks. And then another person wrote in and was wondering, which sustainable packaging would you recommend for greens?
Greens. So good. Sarah, do you want to go first or?
That's in the works for us. We're still trying to find that delicate balance, like what Jamie was talking about how the moisture, there needs to be moisture on the product, but not too much moisture and not too much drying out. So that's, for us, it's still in the works.
Yeah, and I got so much interest from microgreen people when they would find my website. I'm like, what in the world is a microgreen? And then when I found out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to grow this. I want to eat these. And so I started growing some, and I would put them in the containers. And if you cut them, you got to sell them that day, and you got to, people have to be aware that they need to be eaten that day or within the day once they're cut, because microgreens, with the moisture you need to hold in there, you don't even want a plastic bag with microperfs. You want a totally sealed plastic bag. And so the other thing that we're looking at, or I'm looking at for the next size that I do is, and I do have people that buy them for microgreens, because like I said, if the customers understand they need to eat them in a day, then they're happy to, go ahead and use them for that. But we're looking at maybe creating a taller box that you could actually grow your microgreens in the box and then just sell the little boxes, and people could just cut the little microgreens. So that's in the works, but that's another thing.
Great. Thank you all. And I think we're going to wrap things up. As we mentioned before, if you have more questions or have specific questions about your products, either of these companies' products, follow up with them directly. And we also are happy to field questions here at CCOF. And so Linda and Sarah and Jamie, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy days to spread some good word about sustainable packaging and answer a lot of people's questions. This has been a very informative presentation, and we are happy to have you collaborate with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here.
And so I just wanted to go over a quick few wrap-up slides. As I mentioned in the beginning, this webinar was part of a farmers marketing series that we've had going on for about a year. And if you're interested in some of the other webinars in the series, there are recordings on our website. Next month, we'll have a webinar on farm and food business collaborations that I'm really excited about, how both businesses can sort of synergize and help each other out during these kind of unprecedented times. The CCOF Foundation has a number of grants that are open right now, so I'm going to run through those really fast. Our Future Organic Farmer Grant Fund has our FFA education grants open. So if you have a high school student who's in FFA in your life, send them in our direction, and the application period ends on November 27th. We also have organic transition grants. So if you are looking to transition into organic, this might be an option for you. There's more information on our website, and the deadline for that is also November 27th. We also have a Brickmont Hardship Assistant Fund for organic producers who have experienced hardship. And there are a lot of those, unfortunately, this year, given COVID and the wildfires and everything else that's going on. So if you or someone you know might be eligible for a grant, there's more information on the website, and the deadline for this one is November 20th. So it's a little earlier than the other two. And just also to note, the CCOF Foundation and CCOF has a couple websites for resources on crisis resilience in relation to COVID and wildfires. So check those out as well. And finally, we're having some post-webinar virtual marketing consultations with Jamie Collins this afternoon. And if you had pre-registered for those, you received an email with your logon information. We also have several spots open still. So if you are interested, contact the CCOF Foundation through our email there, and we can set up a time. And, or you can also, I sent out a reminder email for this webinar yesterday. That could be another way that you can connect with me, just reply to that. Thank you very much for attending, and please fill out the evaluation form. There'll be a survey link that'll appear when you close your browser, and just click on that and go to the survey, and it really helps us design new programming and improve our offerings. So thank you all, and have a good afternoon.